Hello, and welcome to TriggeredCare. I'm Alex. Today I'm going to be talking about flashbacks, the different type of flashbacks, what happens when I go through a flashback, and then ways that I handle my flashbacks. So, let's get into it. First, let's talk about the different types of flashbacks. There's emotional flashbacks, and then there's physical flashbacks. What I mean by those is an emotional flashback often disguises itself as a mood almost, since you can't quite pinpoint where it came from or what happened. It's like your brain goes blank, and it comes with self-esteem collapse, sometimes mutism, sometimes you can't speak well in an emotional flashback, confusion, extreme emotion, whether it's sadness or anger, can't quite understand what's going on, along with disassociation. So while you're in an emotional flashback mood, what a self-esteem collapse is where you all of a sudden feel horrible, and that angry voice or sad voice will come on telling you about how you're worthless, it's not worth it. You know, no matter what you try to do, you'll never be right. No matter what you put your mind to, no matter what you try to help, you're always going to mess it up. And it's a very deep to the core feeling, which makes it different than a regular bout of depression, or not to downplay that at all. Just it's a very deep feeling of inadequacy and worthlessness that you can't quite tell. It took me a long time to even learn what an emotional flashback was, because I had them so often. I didn't really consider it a flashback, I considered it a mood of mine. For the next one, physical flashbacks, that's going to interfere with your auditory, visual, body senses. Sometimes you feel physical pain from a past event. There's a dramatic change versus with the emotional flashback that kind of creeps up in your mind and all of a sudden you're there. With a physical flashback, it's almost easier to know that you're having a flashback because it is much more out of the ordinary. It will come along with strong hallucinations, whether those are noises that you hear that aren't there, visual things that you can see that aren't there, or feeling. Sometimes I still feel belt whips on my back, like I'm getting hit. So these are a lot more obvious in nature for you to be like, oh, this is from my mental illness. During a physical flashback, often my vision will go in and out, and it's almost like my brain's on two different frequencies. One of them's grounded in the real world, and then the other frequency will come in stronger and stronger until I'm witnessing a recreation of the past, of a past traumatic event. Sometimes it's not even traumatic. Sometimes it's really confusing, and it seems like a normal, okay situation to be in, but your brain is still flashing back to it. Or sometimes they're just really random and you can't even really place where you are, what's going on, because it's such a small sliver of memory. Also, intense amount of emotional voices will be in my head. It's almost like my head is a large room and there are many, many voices in there talking over each other. There's some louder than others. There's some that grab my attention more than others. Usually my savior voice will grab my attention pretty well now. Through recovery, I've learned how to kind of pick him out of the voices and kind of listen to him more than anybody else. I still fight with the angry voice a lot while in a flashback. And that takes practice, and that takes a while to get used to. And then for the last symptom, I will have difficulty telling where or when I am. In my intense flashbacks, I feel and I see like I am a little girl sometimes, and it can be very hard for my brain to stay rooted in reality at all, because the sights that I'm seeing, the feelings that I'm feeling, the things that I'm hearing are matching up with my memories so well that I am back there in a way. But I'm not, because obviously time travel is not possible, but it feels very possible and a very horrible possibility when you have PTSD, because you can't really change the outcome of what happened during that traumatic event. But it's not like your brain knows that, so sometimes your brain goes, oh, well, you know what to do now. You have to fight your way out, or you have to do this to get out. And that can cause a lot of problems and a lot of tension, especially in close relationships and people that you live with, because those outbursts and those episodes are very intense to witness. They're very intense to live through ourselves, but just witnessing it can really leave really intense emotions for whoever's in the room, for whoever's there supporting you, for whoever, loves you and wants to help you. It takes a toll on them. It takes an incredibly big toll on yourself. Usually after a intense, severe flashback, I am exhausted. Sometimes I fall asleep. It seems like in the middle of one where I just curl up in a ball and pass out. Usually that's when I go to the happy place, where it feels fuzzy and you're floating because you just cannot handle what's going on. For how I handle them myself, I have a crisis medicine that I have, alazepam, also known as Xanax, 0.5 milligrams. I don't suggest this for everybody. What I do suggest is going to your psychiatrist and explaining that you feel like you need a medicine to help for those intense flashbacks, for that intense anxiety that you're going to feel. I have tried antipsychotics in the past. I've tried a lot of different drugs in the past, and I never really fit well with any of them. They all had symptoms and side effects that I really was not okay with. So I've ended up with a medical plan that only has emergency medicine for the intense times, but I've been doing pretty well with that. And it all depends on what your brain chemistry is, how well you react with different medicines. I don't prefer any medication plan because everybody's different. You need to talk to a professional to know what works for you. The next thing I do, which I already kind of mentioned, was alone time to recover and rest. After a severe flashback, make sure you have enough time to get a nap in if you can, or to chill out and watch some TV and just zone out if you can. If you try immediately to analyze it, it could take you down that rabbit hole of getting worse and re-traumatizing yourself and re-triggering yourself. So you need to have a good rest, a good reset for your brain after a severe flashback. Next, I talk to my loved ones about my flashbacks, and I also talk to my therapist about my flashbacks. For my husband, he witnesses almost all of my flashbacks that I have, and sometimes they're really scary for him, especially when I can't communicate during a flashback, when I can't tell him what's going on. I can't tell him what I'm seeing. I can't tell him anything because I'm stuck in my freeze response, or I'm in my fight response and I'm terrified of hurting him on accident. So once I'm out and once I have a chance to reset my brain and think clearly about it, that's when I sit down with him. I tell him what I saw. I tell him what I experienced and how I feel about it now. And then with my weekly therapist appointment, I'll go to my therapist and I'll tell her exactly what happened and what I was feeling and thinking. And she is a lifesaver for me. She has very much helped me make sense of a lot of flashbacks and accept myself more for not feeling stupid about them. Because when you're early in recovery, your flashbacks, they feel like such a terrible defect to have that you don't want to burden people with that. You don't want to burden people with your episodes. You don't want to burden people with your feelings. So establishing that love support system for yourself of people who are like, hey, I care about you and I love you and I will help you because I want to, because they can see you as a person. They don't just see the mental illness. And you need to start doing that with yourself, seeing yourself more than just a mental illness. You are a person. And making it through and living with PTSD shows me that you're probably a really cool person who has a lot of great ideas and a lot of original takes on things that should be shared. So, next thing that I do to help with a flashback is I write about them. I did this activity. I actually talked about it in another video about the writing exercise where you split up your life and then you put significant memories to that. Well, when I have a really big flashback that I don't know what to do with, or it's been bothering me, or it keeps coming back, I have it written out on a Word document, all my memories from that exercise, and I've been adding to it since then. And I'll add a flashback where I think it goes in my timeline, and that kind of helps cement it over and helps my brain accept it just that little bit more. That makes it easier to handle. And lastly, I thank my inner child for sharing with me this memory that was very hard, especially if it's a repressed memory, especially if it's not even repressed, if it's a memory that I just forgot about because it's too hard to think about and I'm reminded of it. I will thank my inner child, which is kind of counterintuitive at first because of that self-hate that you have for having episodes and for being different. But you need to fight through that to learn how to love yourself enough to thank your little one, to thank the little kid that got frozen inside of you. Thank you for sharing with me and trusting me enough to show me what happened. Because this is a relationship between you and the traumatized child inside of you. And in order to feel better, in order to make progress, you have to foster the love and trust with yourself and with your inner child enough for them to be comfortable enough to show you the stuff that still hurts them, that still makes them act out, that still makes them uneasy. And that's real. I was in therapy for many years before I started thanking my inner child, and there was a dramatic difference once I started that dialogue with my inner child and I spoke more openly with her, with how I felt about the flashback, how she must have felt about the flashback, and it really helped me move on anyway. I'm not cured, because this stuff, you can't cure it, but I'm more comfortable in my body. It's easier for me to ground, and she communicates with me almost in a more respectful way, if that makes sense. So, yep, that is how I handle flashbacks. So, that's my take on flashbacks. I figured I'd make one about them since I've experiencing a lot of them lately. But like I said, I've come to a more comfortable place with them in a way. I mean, they're still terrible, and I still have episodes that feel awful. But my bounce back is a lot better, and my overall perspective, I think, is a lot better than what it used to be. So if you have experiences that you'd like to share, feel free to share them here, the Discord, the Reddit, the Facebook. Feel free to private message me on any of those, along with, stay strong. It's been a long couple of weeks, and we're making it through. So, have a good one.